Good morning, everybody. Here we are, week 9. Are we ready to go?
Yes.
All right, we're going to be talking about poaching today, shallow poaching techniques. Who can tell me what poaching is? Heating protein or heating a meat in water. What kind of water? Cold water. You sure we're poaching in cold water? What else can we poach in?
A stock.
A stock. Why would we want to poach in a stock instead of water? Increase flavor, right? Today we're going to be talking about why we poach, what we do, what we poach in terms of equipment, the types of foods that we normally poach. We're also going to be talking about the 12-step process, step by step, how to properly poach our chicken breast pea nerds today, and also the process involved with the chicken filet au poule, which is one of our recipes. We're going to talk about the difference between shallow and deep poaching today. That's one of our learning objectives. And really, really critical, we're going to talk about the critical control points involved in shallow poaching and some of the things to look for to ensure that we're getting the proper texture, doneness, and flavor profile on these dishes. And today's demo is going to be how to set up properly your pan for the chicken breast pea herb recipe. And the timeline has been established. We're also going to be talking a little bit about some of these vocabulary words like poussin and natural rack. A little later in class we'll be covering some of the other vocabulary words that tie into the unit soufide and also on papillotes. So let's start. Why do we poach foods?
Even cooking.
Even cooking, right? Healthier. Okay. Poaching is really one of the best ways to poach foods. And one of the real life applications that we do when we're poaching is it's used for heart healthy, low fat applications because of the fact that we're using leaner types of protein. And we're also using a steaming technique when we're cooking. No added tenderness, no added seasoning, and typically we're using very lean meats when we're doing it. So great question. Why else do we poach?
I think when you use something like a sous vide, it's like really accurate. It's like what you want is what you're going to get.
Right, right. So the process of sous vide is basically meaning vacuum packed, where foods are packed using a vacuum machine for smaller quantities for low and slow, gentle reheating through that process. Typically, poaching involves a stock, a broth, or a court bouillon. Back in Unit 3, we talked about court bouillon. What's a court bouillon?
It's a concentrated broth.
It's a broth, concentrated broth, right? And that adds flavor to the particular food that we're poaching in. You can also use stock for that purposes. What other types of foods do you poach? Eggs, right? How many of you have poached eggs? We did it in week 5, right? What other types of foods are traditionally lend themselves to the poaching process? Chicken? Fish. One of the big ones is fish. Not only fillets and tranches, which are side cuts on fish, but also you can fillet, you can also poach whole fish, also full salmon, things like that. When you're doing that, traditionally those items may be a little larger in size. So what's the difference between shallow and deep poaching?
Shallow water?
Little water. Give me some more specifics. How much liquid? Exactly. We're bringing up halfway up the level of the meat, our poaching liquid. Okay? What else are we doing when we're poaching?
Deep poaching, the meat is completely submerged.
Right, so shallow poaching is halfway up. Deep poaching could be submerged or enough to cover, right?
Yes.
So in your notebooks, make sure we have that distinguishing factor down. What else is a difference? shallow versus deep poaching?
You can use the liquid afterwards to make the sauce in shallow, but you can't, we're not supposed to deep.
Which technique uses the liquid, the flavored liquid, for the sauce preparation? Shallow or deep? Shallow generally is we use the liquid for the sauce. What's that liquid that's left after the poaching process has completed? There's a word for it.
Yes.
No?
No, it is.
Does it start with an R?
Anyone remember from the lecture?
Yes,
Is that what it is?
Like a light stock that's left over.
Anyone remember the word croissant?
Thank
That's it. Okay, that is our liquid that is left after the poaching process that is used for the sauce preparation. Okay? The other two differences between shallow and deep poaching that were covered in the textbook is traditionally shallow poaching uses smaller cuts, deep poaching uses larger cuts, and when you're cooking, shallow poaching is typically done on the top of the stove. Deep poaching traditionally starts on the top of the range and gets finished down below in the bottom of the range. Deep poaching also may not be covered in that process. Questions? No. It's a great question to ask though. Do we flip the protein when we're shallow poaching? And the answer is no. What do we use if we've got the liquid coming up to half the level of the protein? What do we use to cook the other half that's not in it? Steam. Okay? So in there, for our dish today, chicken breast, bean herbs, I've got two pans here today. Which one's going to be the best piece of equipment for our recipe?
The small.
Smaller one. Why do we want to use the smaller pan? Even cooking? Less size means that we're going to be cooking our protein, our chicken breast supremes, in a little bit more of a smaller pan, so it'll be able to cook more evenly as it continues. Okay? The other reason why we poach foods, real life application, is chefs that have been in the industry that do display work will actually traditionally use poaching process to poach some of the foods that they'll be displaying for culinary plate competitions, like a terrine or a chicken breast that they're going to be doing an elegant presentation on. They will use the poaching process because there's no added fat and it really controls the temperature of that cooking process. Okay? We talked about the types of foods. What are the 12 steps in shallow poaching? And in your notes, you want to write these down because you will be following step by step in the process. First one today,
Wash the chicken.
wash and prep the chicken, step one. Okay? The recipe for the chicken breast bean herbs calls for what kind of chicken? The breast. And what are we doing with the breast? Skin on, skin off, size, skin on. A supreme. What did we learn last week when we were doing chicken chardonnay on the sizing of a supreme? Cut in half lengthwise, right? This time it's not going to be an airline breast as the chicken chardonnay is. So what we're going to do is cut that chicken after you bone it off the chicken. And again, your leg and thigh that you're going to be removing from the chicken are going to be used for the kokuban recipe tomorrow. So you want to reserve those on a sheet pan. So we have our chicken that is cut into half for supremes, skin side on, right? They're averaging about 4 ounces. So we want to get our chicken prepped. And you want to mise en place all your ingredients that you need for the recipe. So we have butter that's whole. We've got a salt, pepper, we've got our chicken stock, our heavy cream, our white wine, and our shallots all set up, ready to go. Okay, now that we have our chicken prepped, we're going to be working on setting up our pan for the poaching process. In your recipe, it says to preheat the oven to 325 degrees. What's the next step?
Cover the bottom of the pan with butter.
Cover the pan with butter. Okay? How are we going to do that? We got our pan right here.
Rub it on.
Rub it on generously. What's the purpose of putting butter in the pan?
So it doesn't stick.
So chicken doesn't stick. Everybody agree? What else is the purpose of fat in this particular dish? Does it add flavor? Remember, we're using lean chicken breast right here. So the poaching process, we are not going to be really breaking down the collagen fibers in it or breaking down the meat cuts. We're going to be using a very gentle process with it. The next step, after we've picked this appropriate pan and we put the butter in the bottom of the pan, is to add our aromatics and also to add the chicken that's going to go over the top. Our aromatics today are chopped shallots, minced. So we're going to put that into the bottom of the pan. You remember, we don't have any heat going on this right now. We're going to spread those out over the bottom of the pan. And what are we making right here in this pan? What is this called? Let's pick one of these vocabulary words.
Natural rack.
A natural rack, right? So what's the purpose of putting the chicken on here when we're poaching?
That's the flavor.
It's going to add the flavor of the shallots, absolutely. What else is it going to do?
It's gonna keep it on.
Exactly, great job. We put our chicken on there, it's going to prevent the chicken from adhering to the pan and control that cooking process. So we're going to put our chicken, we're going to spread that out. We're going to put our supremes skin side up. Remember when we did the Chardonnay last week, we had skin side down? We're going to be doing skin side up when we do that. Right?
Yes, Chef.
Did I miss any steps? I did. What step did I miss?
Salt and
Tisha.
pepper.
Salt and pepper, right?
Yes, Chef.
We always want to pre-season our protein when we're poaching before we put it onto that wrap. A natural rack of the shallots. Okay, and we're going to use white pepper for this application today instead of black pepper. Okay, what's our next step? That's what it should look like. Now we're adding our wine, right? The recipe calls for 2 ounces of white wine. We're going to gently add that to the bottom of the pan. What's the other ingredient that gets added at this point in our recipe?
Stock.
The chicken stock, right? And again, we're using cold chicken stock. Cold meat, everything is cold because one of the critical control points, if you want to write down in your notes today, is we want to control the temperature and control the time that we're poaching. What's the ideal temperature for shallow poaching? Anybody remember? 140? Any other guesses? 120? The ideal poaching temperature is 160. So when you're poaching, it should be 160 to 180 degrees. And one of the applications that we're going to learn today is how you're going to tell when you hit 160 160 degrees. What is that poaching liquid going to